Case Lawrence was a failed entrepreneur with 6 kids at home, staring down bankruptcy after the 2008 recession wiped him out. Then he walked into a trampoline park in San Francisco and everything changed. Today, he's the founder of SkyZone, a billion-dollar trampoline empire with parks across the globe. His new book, Off the Ground, just dropped. This one's packed with real lessons on raising capital, finding the right investors, and scaling from nothing.
Startups with Stu is a podcast for anyone living or wanting to live the startup life, either as a founder or a team member. Your host, Stuart Draper, was a 9-time Inc. 5000 honoree before age 40. This show dives deep into the exhilarating world of entrepreneurship with guests that are seeking advice from Stu for their startup or business owners that want to share their entrepreneurial journey. Listeners always walk away with actionable ideas of what to do to take their startup to the moon. Startup life can feel like a roller coaster ride, and with Startups with Stu, you're likely to turn your roller coaster ride into a rocket ship ride. Get ready to uncover the secrets to startup success from visionary founders and savvy investors who've transformed groundbreaking ideas into thriving ventures.
Get ready to bounce with me today on this fun episode of the Startups with Stu show. We have Case Lawrence, the founder of Circus Tricks, now known as SkyZone, a set of trampoline parks across the globe. Can't wait to learn more about that. He is also the author of the book Off the Ground. Case, you want to hold up your copy there so we can see? Off the Ground, a new book just launched this year to talk about building a billion-dollar trampoline empire. I love to hear it, and I love people that have dreamt big and then found a way to make their dreams a reality. So Case, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Stu. Appreciate it. I followed your career too with a lot of interest, and love what you've built and created, and love what you're doing now, mentoring new entrepreneurs and investing. And it's a great world to be in.
Yeah, I think that a main driver for me, I have a personal mission to help over 1,000 people become millionaires. Whether that be through listening to the episodes of the show, coming to one of my Startups with Stu retreats, meeting with me in person, having me be one of their angel investors. Like, there's a myriad of ways that you can help a founder reach their goals. And look, it takes the founder. It will never be that, oh, Stu made it happen. Stu did it for me. But I want to be able to have people say, yeah, he was definitely a key part of my journey. And so, thank you for helping me fulfill my mission today, Case, and coming on the show. So Case, tell me about the original aha moment. I should go do trampoline parks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because my career trajectory had literally zero to do with trampoline parks. I'm an attorney by education and started my career in Silicon Valley working with startups. Working with tech startups and other entrepreneurs, including one of the entrepreneurs I worked with was a young South African who had started a company called X.com, and I worked with him and worked on the merger of X into PayPal, and that was Elon Musk. So I was surrounded by these incredible tech entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and really inspired by them. So much so that I wanted to do my own thing. I thought, hey, if these guys can do it, I don't want to just service entrepreneurs. I want to be in the game. I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I started my first company in the early 2000s. I left VLG, the firm I was working at in Menlo Park, and started a company called Cargo Bay. And it was kind of a rendition of, if you think of WeWork or Kiln, today, it was a space or campus for small businesses where they could literally office, do fulfillment, have warehousing for their businesses. A lot of them were more blue collar or the trades, local small businesses. And you could do all of it on a month-to-month basis and pay on a credit card without signing a lease or being confined by the strictures of a lease. And I just loved the idea, loved the concept, got up and running, and had two of these up and going. And then the financial recession hit and just wiped me out. And at its core, this idea, this cargo bay concept I was doing was a real estate concept. And so it just didn't, it couldn't survive the real estate recession. So this is a long way of answering your question of I was in a state of desperation and a real disrupted place as a failed entrepreneur looking for a job, 6 kids at home, needing to figure out how I was going to put food on the table. And so I came at it from a place of being totally disrupted, didn't have anything on my plate, in the middle of a recession, needing to find a job or something. And it was during that time I went to a trampoline park in San Francisco, took my boys who were 9 and 7 at the time, and we went to this place, and it was right in downtown San Francisco at the Presidio. They'd remodeled the old Presidio military base and taken one of the hangars there and turned it into a trampoline park. And so we walked into this place, and I had no idea what to even expect. And it just blew my mind. You know, it was just such a bizarre mashup of entertainment, fitness, this big full room of trampolines, and my boys loved it. They had a great experience. And by the time I left that visit, I had in my mind, like, you know, I could do one of these. This would do great everywhere. I love this concept. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And it took that spark, it took being in a position in my life where everything I had previously been doing had been disrupted. So I was in this state of not just desperation, but open to considering different options. And that was the genesis.
Wow. So you're just in a state of desperation, got to find a way to win, make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
And that's where this all originates from. So wait, the cargo bay stuff, were you able to like utilize those?
No. In
Okay.
fact, I glossed over the story, but I spent 2 years of my life previous to that encounter. I spent 2 years of my life just trying to avoid bankruptcy on these two big cargo bay projects. I had huge loans on each of them, huge commercial loans that I personally guaranteed. And so because of that, the banks could have forced me into bankruptcy at any time. And fortunately, the banks were in a state of chaos during the recession. And so I worked with them for literally over 2 years and ended up coming to solutions on both of those big loans. One was a deed in lieu, what's called a deed in lieu, kind of a technical term to give them back the project. The other was a short sale. And I narrowly avoided bankruptcy. And so Cargo Bay had really just that had just happened when I had this kind of inspiration and exposure to a trampoline park.
So does Cargo Bay exist today in any form, or did it just end up dying out because of all that?
I think there's
fight?
one that we ended up doing a license deal with another operator in Missouri, and I think he still operates under the Cargo Bay flag, but I don't have anything to do with that. I still love the concept. I think it was great, and I think others have really taken the concept and improved and done a lot better with it, and frankly done it in conjunction with timing that was a lot better for it. And that's often the case with these ideas. You know, there's a lot of great ideas that just the timing is wrong. They're either too early or too late or whatever.
Oh yeah. How did you handle the pressure of getting, like, I think for a lot of founders, hearing how you answer this as someone, now you've grown that, like you went from, oh, we failed. Oh, I was like on the verge of bankruptcy to, hey, I started something else, grew it to 300 facilities, 5,000 employees. 50 million annual guests. Sky Zone is the largest owner, operator, and franchisor of trampoline parks in the world. Like, you look at the amazing success that it is today, but you had to go through some real like squeeze of
Yeah.
feeling the pressure. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to make it, right?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, like many, like you, like others, I've been in the furnace of entrepreneurship when it's not going well, right? And I think that makes it, you appreciate all the more when you do have product market fit, when you do have traction, when you do have wind in your sails, you do have momentum, and you realize all the different factors that have to conspire in order to make that happen, and it's funny. I don't know if we're on your podcast today. For many years, I've been a big fan of the How I Built This podcast with
Guy
Guy
Raz.
Raz.
Yeah, go
And
check out Guy Raz's show, folks,
it's
if
a
you haven't.
great show. And I'm referencing it only, Stu, because you know this too. At the end of every episode, he asks, so what, how did this happen? How did the success happen? Was it luck or was it you? And whenever I listen to that, I just laugh because I think of all the factors that all the good fortune that has to come together for something really to succeed. It takes so many factors, and that good fortune was present with Circus Tricks, now Sky Zone, fortunately.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. Building Stu Kent from zero to supporting over 1 million students and to thousands of institutions globally. I can't tell you how like fortunate I feel that it all worked out. Three different times we can only make 2 more paydays. We got to find a way to get the cash raised, the funding done now, and it's fun to say that now because I hope some former team members will listen in and go, "Oh, whoa, Stu never like alluded to the fact that we were that close." But yeah, we were so close, and but the number of stars that align, the planets getting together with the right recruit at the right time. I mean, my best sales rep, who Brandon Winter, came to us as so he was family of a couple of the three of the angels, and so he was anxious and excited about the concept, but he was doing like supply chain management for Target, which was a fancy way of saying he was like the warehouse general manager for a Target facility. And now he was the best sales rep of my ed tech. Like that's you can't like go, oh, I'm going to go purposely find someone from that space and make them be good at ed tech sales. That just happens to you in large respects. So
Brandon's a special talent. He is a unique talent. So that doesn't surprise me that he had that mobility, right, and breadth as a team member, because he's a dynamo.
Yeah, and that leads to a fun conversation I'd like to have with you that kind of is a little bit of a tangent, but a fun one. So Brandon was able to get stock options in Stu Kent. He built the business with me, got to a payday when we had our private equity deal in 2021. Since then, he's invested in a few different businesses that he owns. Real estate's done well for him. He has a software company called Fundraise Genius that's done well. And he's also now working on a really cool mental health for sports athletes project called Impact Ed. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. He actually met Dallas Pruitt, the original idea guy behind Impact Ed. And those two are just really starting to blow it up. It's fun to see. You've probably had some of that where you've seen people that, because you guys all went and won as a team with your startup, that is such a success story. Now those people are going and building and doing their own things. Have you seen some of that?
I have, and I'm glad you brought this up because, usually as entrepreneurs and in the business world, we have one type of success that we celebrate, which is exits, liquidity events, lucrative types of endings to companies or ventures, and what that means financially, and where these things were able to grow. And that's true. And that's easy to point to. It's very tangible, and it's great. On the other hand, I think that the most important success is, what about the team that you mentored and built, and what has happened to them? And the example I give for that is, I'm a big Duke basketball fan. I went to Duke Law School, used to sleep overnight in tents to get into Duke basketball games at Cameron Indoor Stadium. I'm a big Coach K fan. Mike Krzyzewski, the greatest college basketball coach in history, an amazing leader. And if you were to look at Coach K and say, what would be the most important metric of success for him? Is it national championships that he's won, Final Fours that he's gone to, multiple, for both of those milestones? Or is it how many of Coach K's former assistants and players are now head coaches in D1? And if you start looking at all of those people who he mentored and he brought and who are now coaching in D1, the John Shires, the Bobby Hurleys, the Steve Wojciechowskis, on and on and on, all of these former players and coaches that he's mentored and brought along, and then fed into the ecosystem of college basketball. And I think that's the same in entrepreneurship. Like, by far the more rewarding metric for me is watching my old warriors, who were just jet fighters for me, and were in the trenches and learned the lessons with me, and I had a chance to support and mentor, to watch them now taking the baton and building for the next generation. In my case, of the next generation of family entertainment, is so satisfying. And yeah, we have some great ones. I mean, there's some great concepts, great entrepreneurs that came out of that, and I'm proud of all of them. I shouldn't even start mentioning them, because I'll leave some out, and I love them all and I'm proud of them all. So
Absolutely. Yeah. If you've never checked out the Google search PayPal Mafia, go search that up, or just ask your AI to tell you more about the PayPal Mafia. What that is a list of all of the other successful tech startups that came out of the founding team that grew PayPal. LinkedIn comes from someone that was at PayPal. Tesla, owned by Elon Musk. Elon Musk got his first win with his first big win with PayPal. So go check that out. And I'm sure at this point there's quite the circus tricks mafia. And it is a cool part of entrepreneurship to study and check out.
Yeah, it really is. And at the end of the day, after all the dust is settled, it's all about the relationships, and the bonds that are built in the trenches with your fellow team, and it's really rewarding. So, great topic. We don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, I agree. Give me a brief synopsis on the book Off the Ground. What are we going to get ourselves into? What are we going to learn from tuning in?
Plug it again. So the book's available now for pre-order on Amazon. It actually doesn't release until January 20th. But what Off the Ground is it's kind of a mashup of a memoir of my experience building Sky Zone, building Circus Tricks, building the indoor trampoline park industry. Actual, real, on the ground stories and experiences that from the trenches of doing that, and then it's mashed up with entrepreneurship lessons and principles. I teach entrepreneurship at BYU. I've done that for the last 6 years now, and I found myself using a lot of these stories from my experience that are in the book. I've used them to teach these principles of entrepreneurship. And so I finally, with some encouragement from my students and others, was encouraged that this would be a good idea to put these in one place, to put them in the book. So they're real stories that are real case studies for real entrepreneurship principles and insights. And that's kind of the point of the book.
Oh, I love it. So let's jump into that a little bit. What are some of those early days things that you did that made it so you could win? I know, by the way, that you guys worked with Peary Group, right? The
Yeah.
Steve Young's group down there out of the Bay Area. Tell
Yeah.
us maybe a little bit about that, how that was a win. But some of the
Yeah.
things that I think what I want, Case, is for a founder listener to go, oh, that was a key. Maybe I got to go do this like he did, but for my space. So tell me, give us some of that.
So I think you're referencing investment partners, and let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the reasons my story is a good case study for that is that trampoline parks back in 2011, 2012 were a complete new phenomenon. They were weird. They were perceived as dangerous, perceived as a fad, perceived as a flash in the pan. And as a result of all that, there were no real institutional investors who would seriously consider investing in a trampoline park. Likewise, there were no banks that would invest in a trampoline park or loan on a trampoline park, or even, for SBA purposes. So it was really about as close to an unfundable type of concept as you could find. There were concerns about liability for good reason, and everything else. And so the only way to fund these projects was through personal, direct angel investing, and really, direct relationship with those investors. And so that was the only way to do it. There was just no other way to do it back then. And that's what I started out doing. I was raising individual angel money for each one of these deals. And as you know, that can be a really slow, uh, process with a lot of friction and a lot of obstacle to it, especially when you're raising 50 grand, 25 grand, 100 grand a pop, and you're putting all that together to come up with $1 million to do this project. And, one thing I've learned, and you've probably the same, is it doesn't matter if someone has put 20 grand into a project, or that same individual or a different individual has put 2 million into a project. The same anxiety, the same responsibilities to them as an investor, their same attention and need for communication is all the same, whether it's 20 grand or 2 million. Sometimes it's more for the investor with 20 grand because that money, means more to them. And so I have always believed and approached this with the feeling and brought this from my experience in Silicon Valley and also in my failed business. The relationship between an entrepreneur and an investor is a sacred relationship. When someone has literally trusted their money to you as an entrepreneur, it is almost overwhelming to really consider what the responsibility that's in your hands to be a good steward with that for those investors. And so I took that seriously. Yeah.
Preach,
It is just it's a really it's a big responsibility. And so I had done about 4 or 5 of these trampoline parks, all with angel investors, and I was tired. First of all, I'd exhausted all the relationships I had of people who potentially could invest. Felt like I'd mined all of those, and I didn't, want to keep going back to the well there. They were all performing well and doing great, but it was just so exhausting to raise money in that manner for each one. It was impossible to scale that way. And it was during that time that someone connected me with Jason Peary at Peary Partners. And Jason runs a family office there based out of Palo Alto. And because it was a family office, they didn't have limited partners. And because they didn't have limited partners, they had complete independence and flexibility about what they invested in, how much they invested in it. They didn't have, contractual obligations or charters that pin them in. in the way that many investment groups do today. And because they had that flexibility, Jason was able and willing to take a flyer on me and a flyer on this new wacko concept that had kind of come out of nowhere. And so that began a partnership with Jason Peary and his partner Ben Crockett, who's another great friend and great partner. And if not for that relationship with Peary, Circus Tricks, i.e. Sky Zone as it is today, would not exist. I tell my students and young entrepreneurs I'm mentoring, the decisions about taking money from the right person at the right place at the right time will make all the difference in their success. And that was true in my experience. And I've seen many entrepreneurs blow it by taking the wrong money from the wrong person and taking it at the wrong time, taking way too much too early, or vice versa, or whatever it might be. So that is a critical part of any entrepreneur's growth, is the right money, the right person, the right people at the right time.
Yes, yes. Go and hunt down those stars that you have to align that he just described right there, folks. That's exactly right. I just can't get over how much I love the way you said that the relationship between an entrepreneur and an investor is really a sacred one. I just remember, for me, taking 25 grand for someone. 25 grand for me was a lot of money. For them, now looking back, I'm like, oh, dude, that was pocket change for that guy.
Yeah.
But because I just hadn't felt that kind of money and opportunity to cut a $25,000 check I might not see again. But I'm so grateful. Even though now I realize that it was pocket change, I'm still so grateful that if you gave me 25 grand in 2014, I was sending you back a check for almost $1 million in 2021. And that kind of fun win, like, it was, I think for some people, they're like, be stingy with your equity. And I think you do need to be careful, but you also need to be happy and excited that you're giving your investors return. They took a bet on you when no one else would. They took a bet on you when, if you didn't get the money, you may not ever get to the next stage. And so I have no regrets. I looking back, I've learned things like, oh, maybe I could have done bridge financing with a bank for 3 or 4 months versus having to go and give up equity. But man, at the end of the day, everyone won in our case. And there are stories where you don't win and investors lose. And America is built, though, on entrepreneurship, and it takes those that have been able to have paydays being willing to go, man, I know how lucky I got, how many stars aligned, but I'm still going to go and take some bets on some other founders. So thank you for what you're teaching those students. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. Two thoughts came to mind as you were saying that, Stu, because I totally agree with what you're saying. And the two thoughts are, one of the great joys, the existential joys of successful entrepreneurship is when there's a liquidity event. And yes, you have a liquidity event, but that all these people, all your comrades who worked with you, they have a liquidity event. It's almost more joyful to watch them put money in their pocket than it is for you to put money in your pocket. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is a true joy that I wish upon every entrepreneur who does this. It's a great experience. And then, the second insight, you touched on this, and I think it's so important. I have never seen a company succeed or not because they negotiated a better chunk of the equity with an investor, or frankly with an employee, right? That they gave too much equity to this. Like, success for a startup is a binary dispositive question. Either it's going to succeed and reach a liquidity event, or it's not. It's very the spectrum of results are actually pretty binary. Um, and I have never seen anyone make money by negotiating more tightly on their equity. You know, instead, I have seen people make money because they built the best team around, and those guys were just hugely motivated because they had equity. But I've never seen anyone, um, at the end of the day, they have their liquidity event and they're all, the whole key here was I didn't, I only gave a little bit away along the way. Like that never is going to mean anything, and so
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. The only example that came to my mind when I was like, oh, maybe in his case, you look at a guy like Mark Zuckerberg, it's so rare, right? That you can be a founder CEO for as long as he's held. But he also has always kept himself in a position of control where no one could get oust him. And in his case, he has something that has so much control and power in the world that it would be really dangerous for that to just get in the wrong hands
yeah,
or to be, So
right,
anyway, for what
right,
that's worth, I
yeah,
can't,
yeah.
like you said, I agree with you. I cannot think of examples where I've heard a founder say, man, if I had just negotiated equity differently, then the deal everything else would have worked out. It's
Right,
never
right,
about.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's fascinating stuff. So, as far as those first deals you got done, I like to study those because I think for most founders, the 0 to 1 million is way harder than the 1 million to 10 million for most. And so tell me about those first 4 or 5 locations that you got going. And I'm guessing you would say that if you didn't get those, you don't get Jason Peary on board to go and do more, right? So
Well, a couple things. One is it was still very, very early in the trampoline park industry. And so you had white space throughout the country. At that time, I was looking for markets to do these parks where there were 1 million people in the metropolitan area without a trampoline park. And that was my vetting criteria. I was looking for those markets, and there were still many of them in America. And so that's kind of an indication of the white space that was there. And so I was identifying those markets. Then I was finding operators who were willing to move there and run a park. One of which early on was a guy named Zane Hansen, who you and I both know, who moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and did a bang up job there, and then went on to grow with me at Circus Tricks and was a key player and
love
plays a part
Zane.
in the book too. But so we were looking for these markets. The other thing that was happening is competition was beginning to seep in, and so the white space was getting gobbled up, and the price of these parks was going up. So the first park I ever did, I did for less than $500,000. The next one I did was closer to $1 million. The next one, just over $1 million. The next one, 1.2, 1.3. And so there was this gradual creep. And part of that was what we were learning about the unit economics of these parks, which were you build them bigger. When you do have white space like that and you have a market that you're going in, it makes sense to do them as big as you possibly can. So we were doing bigger parks that cost more. Competition was requiring us to be thinking competitively about the attraction mix in our parks. And so we were doing more and more sophisticated things. That was driving the price up. So you gradually saw the capital requirements for scaling this going up and up and up. And today, like I said, in those early days, we were doing them for $1 million a piece. Today, to do a passing adventure park or trampoline park in the American landscape, you're looking at 3.5 million minimum, to do a competitive park. And so that's, that was a key consideration. So to scale a business like a trampoline park business, you can quickly see that the name of the game is capital. Excuse me.
Bless
You
you.
can edit out that sneeze. But you can clearly see that the name of the game is capital and sourcing these parks, because that's going to be the choke point. That's the limiting factor of how fast you can grow, and that's why that relationship with Puri was so critical.
Yeah. I I believe personally that you you need to be building your reputation of trust and respect for years in order to get to a place where fundraising starts to get easier.
Yeah.
Uh, if Case wanted to go raise money now, it'd be easy. He'd be having to pick and choose who he wants to let in on a deal.
Right.
Um, whereas when he was Case that had just been through almost bankruptcy,
Yeah.
and you're having to like just really build and work on the relationship so they get to a place where like, yeah, okay, fine, we'll do a $25,000 check and see where this goes. So like just make sure that you're taking time to build those relationships of trust over time, and know that it is a long-term game. No easy way about it.
So true. In fact, when Puri and I first met, again, this thing was so new, so wild, but he knew he was onto something, and I loved Jason, and we worked out, kind of to your point, we worked out a trial. We said, let's do 3 of these and see how they do. Let's do 3 of
Mm-hmm.
them, and we'll try it. So our original deal, we worked out the contract, and it was all about funding 3 of these parks. And I'll never forget, we got all 3 of them up, and all 3 of them were just cranking and doing super well. And Jason Peary and his partner Ben Crockett and I went on a little road trip after this was done. After they were open, we went to go check each one out. A little road trip. We drove from park to park. Most of them were in kind of the southeast, Knoxville, uh, Greenville, South Carolina, and some other places. And so we drove, and it was such a rewarding experience to be with an investor. You've done this together. It succeeded, and it's gone well. How many things in life, especially in business, go according to plan, go well? It's so rare, you can put it on one hand. And so we were relishing that and enjoying that, and we got it provided the opportunity to kind of imagine and think big and kind of get outside the box. And by the time we finished that trip, we had a larger arrangement in place where Jason said, listen, Case, what would it take for you to have the resources to just grow, grow, grow? And we mapped that out and put a program in place, and that was really the inflection point. So from there on out, we had a program in place that didn't require me to go back to Jason and renegotiate every time. We just put a program in place that said, hey, you go grow, you find the place. If it meets this criteria, here's how we will fund it and invest it. And on that basis, we were able to go. And I mean, at one point, Stu, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, we were doing, we were opening 2 parks a month at some points there. I mean, we were really smoking. So it was a great time and a great investor. Another question, though, that this reminds me of, if you will, Stu, because I know a lot of your listeners are uh, young entrepreneurs also, and I talk to my students about this, is what are your expectations as an entrepreneur about how much equity the investor should get, or how the pie should be split? I get so many questions about that, and there's no book about it. There's no formula you can reference, no AI that will coax up some suggestions for you. It is totally witchcraft in terms of figuring out in what business, what industry, what the split of equity should be between an investor and an entrepreneur. And my rule of thumb that I started with in my journey, and that I suggest to others, is, look, it's a true partnership. The entrepreneurship is worth 50%, and the capital is worth 50%. That is a good starting place to work from in terms of valuing the relative contributions to a project. And I have found that to be a great rule of thumb, especially for businesses that are new, that don't have a lot of track record or history behind them. That's a good place to start. And when I say 50-50, I mean all the capital necessary is 50%, and then all of the entrepreneurship necessary, including the people you're going to give equity to, and the team, all the management and entrepreneurship that it takes to get something off the ground is worth 50%. And when you approach a deal that way, as a true partnership between the capital and the entrepreneurship, it's also a great dynamic in a partnership that can be successful, and both groups are valuing each other in a great way. And so you might not end up there completely, but I think it's a good place to start the conversation as an entrepreneur. So that's a tip that I give to my young guns.
I like it. And I think that you're wise in sharing that it is kind of witchcraft. There is no easy way to say it's going to be exactly this, or to feel later like it was perfectly fair. I think what's important is not dwelling on that, but instead dwelling on on focusing on how everyone's going to go win.
Yeah.
Because 50% of $1 billion, no one's unhappy with that. Right. So go find a way to go grow this thing. So you're going to be happy with $500 million, and so will they, and it'll be okay because it's enough. Right.
Right.
Like, I think
so
that's
true.
More important to worry about is focusing on how you're going to win, and they're going to win on the upside of growth, and not so much about who got what percentage of it all.
Yeah, exactly right. Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. And I agree with that sentiment 110%.
As far as last pieces of advice, one of the ones that to me I have I've heard really interesting answers to my questions and conversations around this. How have you felt like God has directed your work?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I've certainly made a lot of mistakes as I've tried to listen to that, but it goes back to that Guy Raz question about luck or the entrepreneur. Whenever I hear that, because to me, what comes to my mind is, what about a third option? What about God? And I say this, I think a lot of people can be turned off, but I want to remind you and anyone listening to this that I say this as someone who's had a lot of failures, right? And had a very visible failed business experience. And so you might, well, where was God there? Look, there are reasons for all of those experiences, but in my successful journey at Circus Tricks and now Sky Zone, it wouldn't have happened without God's help and inspiration and protection and guiding through some really precarious experiences. And entrepreneurship is such a faith journey in its own right that it's hard for me to imagine doing that without a firm belief in God, because you're exercising faith anyway. You're just exercising faith in something else if you're not prayerful and having faith in God through an entrepreneurial journey. So that's the only way I know how to do it. That's the only way I know how to advise other people to do it. Is this has got to be a joint venture between you and God, and you need to follow His will and be and feel like you're on a path doing what He wants you to do. And that's the only way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, there is so much wisdom in your statement around you're having to have a belief and hope in something that you can't see yet when you get started, including God in that. For me, it has been so important, and I like the way you put that. So thank you for sharing that and being a little vulnerable with me and sharing your faith. So,
sure.
Case, Lawrence, you guys, author of the book Off the Ground. Go pre-order it. You can get it in January. It'll make your 2026 that much better. This show is where we talk about what it takes to take your startup to the moon. And you just heard Case Lawrence share how he did that with circus tricks. Now go do it with your own business. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having me, Stu.
Thanks for joining me on Startups with Stu. We have big goals to help millions of entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed this show, please take a minute to share it with someone else that needs to hear it, or leave a review. Remember, success is within reach for those who dare to dream big and take action. Until next time, keep pushing forward on your entrepreneurial journey.